No one touches this. Atlas's voice didn't need words. The old white German Shepherd lay low against the cold concrete of the Norfolk Police K9 unit's garage, eyes sharp beneath fur streaked with silver, guarding a weathered wooden box, as if it were the last piece of hope left in the world. Outside, the drizzle fell steady, blurring the edges of the fluorescent lights that hummed faintly above, mingling with the faint smell of motor oil, damp earth, and the lingering scent of rain-soaked pine from the small courtyard beyond. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer in the dim space, and the echo of distant traffic from Virginia Beach Avenue rattled lightly against the walls, unnoticed by Atlas, whose amber eyes glimmered with a vigilance that had been honed over more than a decade of service. The box itself was simple, rough-hewn planks, darkened with age, tied loosely with a fraying rope, its corners chipped as if life had tested it many times over. Yet the weight of it was not in its wood, but in the memory it carried, a memory Atlas had been sworn to protect long after its original owner, Officer Daniel Reeves, had disappeared from this life. A gust of wind pushed through the partially cracked window, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and salt from the nearby harbor, and Atlas lifted his nose, ears pricking, nostrils flaring, a low rumble vibrating in his chest that spoke not of aggression but of a solemn warning. Across the room, a young officer, gloves in hand, stepped forward, hoping to retrieve the box for a routine check, but the instant his shoes scuffed against the cement, Atlas shifted, blocking the path with the strength of a seasoned sentinel. The officer froze, heart tightening as the dog's gaze locked onto him, unblinking and unyielding, a silent command vibrating through the air, "Stay back." Atlas's legs trembled slightly from age, yet his posture held firm, a living pillar of restraint and fidelity. Somewhere outside, the soft thump of a helicopter's rotor faded against the evening sky, and the sound mingled with the rhythmic patter of rain against the corrugated roof. Atlas's tail twitched once, deliberate, a subtle signal that the world was not yet safe for this box to be touched. Then the sound of boots, heavier, steadier, cut through the hum of the building. Marcus Cole entered, Chief Petty Officer, Navy SEAL, the dark green jacket of his uniform falling in folds over broad shoulders, eyes scanning the room with an intensity sharpened by years of missions in unforgiving deserts and coasts alike. He did not move quickly, did not raise a hand toward Atlas or the box. He simply knelt a few feet away, lowering himself to meet the gaze of a dog whose loyalty had been tested by fire, smoke, and loss. "Easy," he murmured softly, voice carrying the calm of one accustomed to navigating danger without making it louder. Atlas's ears flicked, amber eyes narrowing as he studied Marcus, the scent of disciplined air and faint ocean tang from his deployment washing over him. The old K9 shifted minutely, just enough for Marcus to extend a hand toward the ground, not the box, not the rope, but the floor between them, a gesture of trust, patience, and understanding. The garage smelled faintly of damp wood and old leather, the subtle heat from a small heater struggling to fight the chill mingling with the tang of rainwater tracking in from the open doorway. For a long moment, silence ruled, punctuated only by the soft hiss of water dripping from Atlas's fur and the distant echo of a car door closing somewhere outside. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, Atlas nudged the box slightly forward, just enough for Marcus to glimpse the faded initials etched faintly on the side. LR, sunlight from the street catching on the worn carvings. His breath caught. The letters told a story, whispered across time and rain, a story of a father, a child, and a promise kept by paws instead of hands. The dog's growl was low now, more of a murmur, a hum of relief and anticipation, a signal that this man might be the one Atlas had waited for across months and miles of absence. Outside, the drizzle thickened, the scent of the harbor sharper now, brine mixing with the faint smoke of a distant grill, the world continuing unaware of the quiet miracle unfolding in a small, dim garage where an old police dog guarded not just a box, but the memory of devotion, trust, and a secret waiting to be revealed. Marcus remained still, observing Atlas with a patience born from years spent navigating missions where one misstep could cost lives. The garage, dimly lit by the flickering overhead bulbs, smelled faintly of aged leather and the lingering dampness of a recent rain. Atlas shifted slightly, resting his massive head near the corner of the box, amber eyes never leaving Marcus, assessing his intentions, weighing his trust. Each breath the dog took seemed synchronized with the distant hum of the harbor outside, a subtle rhythm that marked time in a world where nothing else could be trusted. Marcus lowered himself further onto one knee, letting his weight settle in a way that was non-threatening, deliberate, a silent message of respect and understanding. His gloved hands rested loosely on his thighs, the leather creaking softly, the faint scent of his own training oil and the salt from years of Atlantic missions wafting into the still air. He spoke softly, almost a whisper, "I am not here to take anything from you. I only want to see." Atlas flicked his ears, a small tilt of his head, and Marcus noted the subtle relaxation in the set of the dog's shoulders, though the tension in his spine remained. Outside, the rain continued to fall in a gentle cadence, tracing the corrugated metal roof and pooling in shallow puddles across the concrete floor, reflecting the soft yellow glow of the lights above. Marcus allowed silence to fill the space, letting the environment itself act as a bridge between human and animal, a language built not of words but of shared awareness and intent. Slowly, he extended a hand further, palm down, hovering just above the ground, not touching the box, not rushing the dog, giving Atlas the control, the choice to engage or retreat. A faint scent of old pine drifted through the slightly ajar door, and Atlas's nostrils flared, tracking the familiar trace of a past long etched into his memory, a memory of Officer Daniel Reeves, of long patrols, and of trust forged through the quiet moments between danger and duty. Marcus's eyes followed every movement of Atlas, noting the slight twitch of his tail, the subtle lift of his head, the momentary glance toward the corner where sunlight managed to sneak in through a crack in the blinds. It was a careful calculus, each micro-expression a signal, and Marcus read them as he would read the environment during a night operation, methodical, deliberate, fully attentive. Time seemed to stretch as seconds elongated into minutes, each filled with the muted sound of breathing, the distant drip of water, and the soft padding of Atlas shifting slightly on the concrete. Marcus finally spoke again, voice calm but firm. "I need to understand what you are guarding." The amber eyes fixed on him, unwavering, and for a heartbeat, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility that had once defined his missions, the responsibility of trust, of life, of protection. Atlas lowered his massive head closer to the box, nudging it ever so slightly toward Marcus, a small yet deliberate gesture, enough to suggest cooperation without surrender, enough to signal that the time for patience was merging with the time for revelation. The air seemed to hold its breath along with them, the faint scent of rain, oil, and leather mingling in the quiet of the night. Marcus leaned forward subtly, observing the markings on the box, the worn initials almost hidden beneath layers of age and grime. Each mark told a story, each scuff a memory, each groove a history that had yet to be fully understood. As he studied them, Atlas made a soft, almost imperceptible whine, a sound that carried more meaning than any human words could, drawing Marcus deeper into the silent narrative that had been unfolding for years, a narrative written in actions, in scent, in loyalty that refused to bend to absence or time. Outside, the harbor lights shimmered through the falling rain, casting fleeting reflections across the wet pavement and into the garage, illuminating the moment with a subtle, ethereal glow that seemed to recognize the significance of what was about to unfold. Marcus exhaled slowly, allowing the weight of the evening, the patience of Atlas, and the quiet intensity of trust to settle into a rhythm that was shared between them, a rhythm older than fear, older than loss, older than the night itself, a rhythm that spoke of fidelity, protection, and the unspoken promise that some things, once guarded, could never be abandoned. The old dog's head remained near the box, eyes flicking between Marcus and the weathered wood, ears tilting slightly as if listening to a conversation only he could hear. Marcus waited, breathing in tandem with the quiet life of the garage, letting the tension and anticipation coalesce into a moment of understanding. Slowly, Atlas nudged the box another fraction, just enough to invite Marcus's gaze to see the markings more clearly. just enough to suggest that the barrier between secrecy and revelation was about to be crossed, and that the story contained within this simple wooden vessel was about to unfold in ways that would reach far beyond the dimly lit walls of the Norfolk Police K-9 unit, touching on loyalty, memory, and the quiet, unyielding power of a bond that had been forged across years of service, rain, and silence. The letters on the box drew Marcus closer, though his hand stayed where Atlas could see it. LR. Two faded initials carved into the side with the uneven pressure of someone who had not been making a label, but leaving a mark before time ran out. The room behind him had gone quiet. The young officer near the door no longer shifted his weight. The animal control worker had lowered the looped leash to his side. Even the old wall clock above the storage cabinet seemed to tick more softly, as if the building itself understood that this was not a case of a stubborn dog and a piece of old property. It was something unfinished. Marcus looked from the initials to Atlas, and the old dog held his gaze with a stillness that felt almost human. "Who is LR?" Marcus asked, not loudly, not for the room, but for the dog. Atlas gave a faint sound in the back of his throat and pressed one paw over the box, not to hide it this time, but to hold it steady, like a witness placing one hand over the truth. A gray-haired sergeant standing near the coffee machine cleared his throat. His name tag read Mallory. He had the tired eyes of a man who had seen too many reports turn into rumors, and too many rumors buried under new paperwork. "Lena Reeves," he said at last. "Daniel's little girl." Marcus did not turn right away. He kept his eyes on Atlas, because the dog had reacted before the name was even finished. One ear lifted. His breathing changed. The low rumble stopped, replaced by something thinner, softer, a quiet whine that slipped through the air like wind under a door. Marcus had heard sounds like that before from working dogs separated from their handlers, from men waking out of dreams they would never describe, from people who had carried a name too long in silence. Sergeant Mallory stepped closer, but not too close. Officer Daniel Reeves was Atlas's handler for 8 years. Best K-9 team this department ever had. Narcotics, missing persons, search work after storms, school safety details, community outreach. That dog could find a lost child in a crowded fairground and sit beside them like a guardian angel until we arrived. Mallory's voice tightened, and he looked away toward the rain-streaked window. 14 months ago, there was a warehouse fire down by the harbor. Daniel was inside when crews got there. Atlas came out dragging that box by the rope, burned his paws on hot pavement, would not let go. We thought it was shock at first. Then days passed. Weeks. He still would not let anyone near it. The fluorescent lights flickered once, and for a brief second the garage dimmed into shadow. Marcus saw Atlas not as he was now, old and stiff and damp from the rain, but as he must have been then, white fur gray with smoke, body low, teeth locked around the rope, pulling something too important to leave behind. "And Lena?" Marcus asked. The silence that followed had weight. The kind of silence that meant the answer had been repeated so many times that people had begun to mistake repetition for truth. Mallory rubbed one hand over his jaw. She was listed among the victims. 7 years old. No one wanted to say much after that. Daniel was loved here. Lena was loved here too. She used to sit right there on that bench after school, waiting for her father to finish reports. She would feed Atlas apple slices from her lunch bag, even though Daniel told her not to. Spoil him. A faint, broken breath left Atlas. His paw tightened against the box. Marcus noticed it. So did Mallory. But no one spoke. Rain moved against the roof in a slow, silver rhythm, and somewhere outside a patrol car rolled past, tires whispering through water. Marcus lowered his head slightly, not in prayer exactly, but in respect for the living and the lost. "You said she was listed," he said. "Not found." Mallory looked at him then, sharply, almost afraid of the shape of the question. The fire damaged everything. The report was complicated. Reports are often complicated, Marcus said. Dogs usually are not. Atlas stared at him, and in that look Marcus felt something shift, a door opening by a single inch. The old dog slid his paw off the box. Not far, just enough. Marcus did not reach for the rope. Instead, he waited. Atlas lowered his muzzle and nudged the lid, then looked toward the far corner of the garage, where a dusty photograph hung crooked on the wall. Marcus followed his gaze. In the picture, Officer Daniel Reeves stood in dress uniform beside a younger Atlas, both facing the camera with quiet pride. At Daniel's side was a small girl with dark curls and a missing front tooth, one arm wrapped around Atlas's neck, her smile bright enough to soften the whole frame. Marcus stood slowly and crossed to the photograph. Beneath it, on a brass plate dulled by fingerprints and time, were the words Officer Daniel Reeves, K9 Atlas, and Lena Reeves, Family Day, Norfolk Harbor Unit. Marcus stared at the little girl's face. Then he turned back toward the box. She gave him this, he said. Mallory blinked. What? Marcus pointed to the frayed rope tied around the box. It was not standard cord, not police issue, not evidence tape. It was a child's jump rope, faded pink beneath the grime, knotted carefully at both ends. Atlas's eyes stayed fixed on Marcus, and for the first time that night, the old dog's tail moved once against the concrete. Not happy, not relieved. Ready. Marcus returned to his knees in front of him, the rain softening beyond the walls, the harbor breathing in the dark. All right, Atlas, he whispered. Show me what Daniel trusted you to. Keep. Marcus lifted the lid slowly, letting the hinges creak softly in the quiet garage, the sound oddly loud against the background of the soft rain pattering on the roof. Inside, the box smelled faintly of cedar and old paper, a comforting, earthy scent that seemed to hold the memory of every day Daniel Reeves had spent in service and at home with his daughter. Marcus kept his movements deliberate, careful not to startle Atlas, whose body remained low, ears twitching at every small sound in the room, tail still pressing lightly against the concrete. The first object Marcus saw was a folded piece of parchment, edges curled from age and moisture, and he reached for it with a gentle touch, feeling the weight of significance rather than physical heft. Next, a small, cloth-wrapped bundle revealed itself beneath the paper. Marcus unwound it slowly, revealing a delicate pair of child-sized shoes, worn but lovingly maintained, the leather soft and creased as if someone had taken care to preserve them. Atlas shifted slightly, nudging the bundle with his nose, a gentle insistence that Marcus handle it with respect, as if the dog knew the story embedded within these objects better than any report could convey. A faded photograph slid from beneath the shoes, Marcus catching it before it touched the concrete. In the image, Daniel Reeves knelt beside a young girl with dark curly hair, her small hands resting on the back of Atlas, who sat proudly with his ears erect. The photograph captured a moment of ordinary joy, sunlight warming the smiles of the human and canine family alike, and yet beneath the warmth lay the shadow of absence, a reminder of what had been lost and what remained hidden. Marcus studied the photograph, letting his fingers trace the edges, feeling the paper's texture, the faint creases where it had been folded and unfolded countless times. He could see the resemblance between Atlas now and the younger dog in the photograph, the same amber eyes that held wisdom, vigilance, and unwavering loyalty. A small, sealed envelope lay at the bottom of the box. Marcus picked it up, noting the careful folding and the wax seal that still held a faint imprint of a paw. Perhaps Atlas's, a marker of guardianship over its contents. He broke the seal gently and unfolded the letter inside, the handwriting instantly recognizable, neat and deliberate, with slight quivers that betrayed the urgency and care with which it had been written. The words, though simple, carried the weight of a father's love and a handler's promise. If you are reading this, Atlas has waited for the right person. Trust in him. Keep her safe. She deserves to see the sun again. Marcus exhaled slowly, feeling the quiet power of the message, the trust placed upon him not by order, but by years of loyalty and silent understanding. Atlas sat forward slightly, resting his chin on the edge of the box, amber eyes glimmering in the dim light, as if waiting for Marcus to understand his role, the bridge between past and present, guardian and guide. Outside, the rain softened, the steady patter turning into a gentle drizzle, carrying the faint scent of wet asphalt, salt from the harbor, and pine from the distant tree line, a natural chorus marking the passage of time and the gravity of the moment. Marcus carefully replaced the photograph atop the bundle and the parchment, leaving the box as it had been, intact and guarded, and looked back to Atlas. The dog's stance relaxed slightly, tail brushing the floor in a slow, deliberate motion, yet the gaze remained sharp, evaluating, measuring, acknowledging. Marcus whispered, not for anyone else to hear, but for Atlas alone. We will find her. A soft whine escaped the dog, not of fear or warning, but of recognition, understanding, and a quiet readiness to move forward, the silent partnership of a man and his K9 forming, built on trust, history, and the unspoken promise that some guardians never give up, even in the face of absence and time. The dim garage held its breath with them, the old fluorescent lights humming gently above, the faint smell of cedar, leather, and rain anchoring the space in the tangible reality of memory and devotion, preparing both man and dog for the steps yet to come, steps that would bridge loss, discovery, and the quiet miracle of loyalty kept over months, perhaps years, unbroken and waiting. By the time Marcus finished reading the letter, the garage no longer felt like a place where equipment was stored and forgotten. It felt like a chapel built from concrete, rain, and unfinished truth. Sergeant Mallory stood with his hands at his sides, face pale beneath the tired yellow lights, while the younger officer near the door stared at the small shoes inside the box as though they had turned the air colder. Atlas kept his chin near the edge of the cedar, breathing shallowly, eyes fixed not on the letter but on Marcus, as if the words had only been the beginning. Marcus folded the paper with care and placed it back where he had found it. "You said Lena was listed among the victims," he said, his voice low and even. Mallory looked down. "That is what the report said." Marcus did not move for a moment. Outside, a truck passed along the wet street, tires hissing through shallow water, and the sound faded toward the harbor. "Who confirmed it?" The question landed softly, but it changed the room. Mallory swallowed, glanced toward the closed office door at the far end of the garage, then back to Marcus. "Captain Blake signed the final report." Atlas reacted before anyone else did. His ears rose. The fur along his neck lifted in a thin white ridge. A slow, pained sound came from his throat, not a growl yet, not a bark, but something old and wounded stirring awake. Marcus watched him. "Howard Blake." Mallory nodded once. He was Daniel's supervisor. The name seemed to hang from the ceiling lights, trembling with the faint electric hum. Marcus turned toward the photograph on the wall again, the one showing Daniel, Lena, and Atlas on family day. A father, a daughter, a dog. 3 lives standing in sunlight before the world went dark. "Where are Lena's records?" Marcus asked. Mallory hesitated. "Archived. I need to see them." "Chief Petty Officer Cole, this is still a police matter." "No," Marcus said gently. "This is a child." No one answered. Atlas rose then, slowly, every movement burdened by age and memory. His front legs trembled, but he stood anyway, stepping away from the box for the first time since Marcus entered. The room seemed to lean toward him. He walked past Marcus, past Mallory, past the young officer, and stopped beside a gray metal cabinet pushed against the wall beneath the old training schedules. The cabinet was scratched, dented, and marked with years of use. Atlas pressed his nose to the bottom drawer and breathed in deeply. Then he looked back at Marcus. Mallory whispered, "That drawer has been locked since the fire." Marcus crouched beside it. On the drawer front, a faded label read Reeves, Daniel, K9 handler. The metal smelled of dust, old paper, and damp air. Marcus did not force it open. He looked at Mallory. "Do you have the key?" Mallory stared at the drawer, and for a moment Marcus saw the conflict in him, the battle between procedure and conscience. Then the older sergeant reached into his pocket, pulled out a ring of keys, and separated one brass key worn smooth from years of use. "Daniel gave this to me before the fire," Mallory said. "Told me to keep it in case anything happened to him." I thought he meant his locker. The key turned with a small, tired click. Atlas stepped closer, almost pressing his shoulder against Marcus's arm. Inside the drawer were ordinary things at first. Training logs, worn leashes, a service commendation, a child's drawing of a white dog wearing a blue police badge, and a pink hair ribbon folded in a sandwich bag. Beneath those was a sealed manila envelope, its edges soft with age. Written across the front in Daniel's careful handwriting were 2 words, "For Marcus." Mallory drew in a breath. That cannot be right. Marcus stared at the envelope, his own name feeling strange in the stale air of the garage. He had never met Daniel Reeves. He had never known this department, this box, this dog, or this child. Yet somehow, a dead officer had written his name months before he arrived. Atlas gave one sharp, breathy sound and tapped the drawer with his paw. Marcus opened the envelope. Inside was a photograph taken from a security camera near the Norfolk harbor. It showed Daniel Reeves standing beside a dark sport utility vehicle, holding Lena close against him while Atlas stood alert at his side. In the background, half hidden by rain, was Captain Howard Blake speaking with, a man Marcus recognized from a federal security bulletin he had studied during a maritime briefing 2 years earlier. A man connected to illegal transport routes along the coast. Marcus felt the room narrow around him. He turned the photograph over. On the back, Daniel had written a single line. "If Atlas chooses you, believe him before you believe any report." Atlas lifted his eyes to Marcus, and there was no confusion in them now. Only pleading. Only certainty. Only the unbearable patience of a loyal soul who had been waiting for someone brave enough to doubt the official story. Marcus looked toward the rain-darkened doorway, toward the harbor lights trembling beyond the glass. "Lena was not erased by accident," he said. The young officer whispered. "Then where is she?" Atlas stepped away from the drawer, picked up the pink ribbon gently in his mouth, and walked to the open garage door. He stood facing the wet street, nose lifted toward the harbor, body shaking with age, but spirit unbroken. Marcus followed him into the cold Virginia night, and the first thing he noticed was that Atlas was not searching for the past. He was following a trail that had never truly gone cold. The night air carried a sharp tang of salt and damp concrete as Marcus followed Atlas through the empty streets near the harbor, each step bringing a rhythm of anticipation and quiet reverence. Puddles reflected the dim orange glow of street lamps, their surfaces trembling under the soft patter of remaining drizzle. Atlas moved with a purpose that belied his age, paws careful yet resolute, nose constantly lifting to the air to capture every trace left behind months before. Marcus kept pace, careful not to crowd the dog, letting the K9 take the lead in a dance that was older than the night, older than loss itself. They reached a narrow alley where the faint scent of pine and oil mixed with the residue of harbor activity. Atlas stopped briefly, ears perked, and Marcus observed the micro-adjustments of his body, the tilt of his head, the faint rise of a paw signaling a decision. Then Atlas turned and led them toward a chain-link gate that had been padlocked for years, the rusted metal glinting. Faintly under the lamplight, the K9 pawed at the lock gently, not to break it, but to indicate that the key hidden in Marcus's pocket, one he had retrieved from Mallory's drawer, would fit this seal. Marcus knelt, inserted the key, and the lock clicked softly, echoing in the still air, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the soft whine Atlas emitted in approval. The gate swung open, revealing a small yard overgrown with weeds, littered with crates and tarps that had weathered countless storms. Marcus inhaled the cold night air, the harbor just beyond carrying the faint hum of distant cargo vessels and the whisper of waves against the pier. Atlas paused at the edge of the yard, scanning the area, then moved forward in a deliberate path, nose low, tail steady, signaling Marcus to follow. As they approached the center of the yard, a faint shape emerged beneath a tarpaulin, a child-sized pair of shoes, neatly placed on a crate, alongside a backpack faded by sun and rain. Marcus's pulse quickened as Atlas circled the area, sniffing carefully, then returned to the side of Marcus, nudging him gently toward the shoes. A folded jacket lay atop the crate, and when Marcus lifted it, he revealed a small girl, curled up but breathing steadily, eyes closed, hair damp from the residual rain. The K9 nudged her gently with his snout, resting his head beside her, a protective gesture that invited Marcus closer but demanded patience and respect. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open to the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through clouds and mist, confusion and wonder mingling in her gaze. Marcus knelt slowly, speaking softly, words deliberate and calm. "It is all right. You are safe now." Atlas stayed low, one paw draped over the crate, ears erect, amber eyes scanning the surroundings to ensure no threat disturbed the fragile moment. The faint scent of pine, old paper, and rain-soaked earth enveloped them, anchoring the space in both time and memory. Marcus gently extended his hand toward the girl, who hesitated, then slowly reached out, touching the sleeve of his jacket. Atlas's tail swept lightly against the concrete, a soft brush that seemed to affirm that this was the right moment, the right person, the continuation of a promise kept across months of uncertainty. The wind shifted, carrying the distant hum of harbor machinery, the faint clink of metal on metal, blending with the rhythm of soft breathing and subtle movements of the child as she became aware of the man beside her and the dog that had waited. Marcus adjusted the jacket around her shoulders, checking for warmth, while Atlas pressed close, the old canine's presence a bridge between the past and the present, between loss and discovery. The sky above was a deep indigo, clouds broken just enough to reveal distant stars, reflecting a quiet hope in the otherwise shadowed scene. The girl's small fingers curled around Marcus's hand, her gaze momentarily meeting Atlas's, recognition dawning not through memory alone, but through a bond older than words, a bond of guardianship, fidelity, and unwavering trust. Marcus exhaled, steadying himself, aware of the significance of the moment, the quiet miracle of the night, the fulfillment of a promise held by a loyal companion that had not wavered despite absence, time, and uncertainty. Atlas shifted slightly, resting his head on Marcus's boot, eyes alert yet calm, as if signaling the completion of a journey that had begun long before either of them arrived at this rain-slicked yard, a journey of patience, trust, and the quiet revelation that some guardians never relinquish their charge until it is safely returned. The discovery did not bring noise. It brought stillness. Marcus wrapped the jacket more securely around the girl's shoulders and watched her breathe beneath the dim harbor light, each small breath turning faintly white in the cool Virginia night. Atlas lay beside the crate with his body curved around her like a wall of old white fur, his eyes never closing, his ears turning toward every distant sound from the warehouses, the road, and the water beyond the pier. For a moment, no one spoke. The harbor seemed to hold them in a pocket of mercy, with rain dripping from rusted gutters and the low call of a boat horn moving across the darkness like a prayer too deep for words. The girl looked smaller than Marcus expected, not because of her age, but because fear had taught her to fold herself inward. Her hair clung damply to her cheeks. Her fingers held the sleeve of his jacket with the fragile strength of someone who had learned not to trust open doors. Marcus kept his voice low. "Lena," he said, giving the name room to reach her without forcing it. Her eyes moved to him slowly. Not startled, not certain, searching. Atlas lifted his head at the sound of her name, and the girl's gaze shifted from Marcus to the dog. Something changed in her face then. Not a smile. Not yet. But recognition moved through her like the first warm line of dawn under a closed curtain. Her lips parted, barely. No word came. Atlas gave one soft whine, the sound of 14 months of waiting pressed into a single breath. Marcus did not ask questions. Not there. Not in that cold yard with weeds brushing against the crates and the smell of old oil rising from the ground. He had learned long ago that truth needed shelter before it could speak. He reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and called Sergeant Mallory first, not dispatch, not the front desk, not anyone whose name had passed through the wrong hands too many times. "I found her," Marcus said. On the other end, Mallory made no sound for several seconds. Then his breath broke. "Alive." Marcus looked at Lena, at her hand still holding his sleeve, at Atlas pressing closer to her side. "Alive." Mallory's voice lowered. "Do not bring her back through the station. I will call Child Protective Services directly and a federal contact I trust. Stay where you are." Marcus understood what the older sergeant did not have to say. If the official story had buried Lena once, the next few hours mattered more than any report ever written. He ended the call and looked toward the street beyond the gate. Headlights drifted past at the far end of the block, slow and deliberate, then disappeared behind the brick wall of a shuttered shipping office. Atlas saw them too. His body stiffened, but he did not leave Lena. Marcus moved between the girl and the gate, not with panic, not with aggression, but with the quiet placement of a man who knew how to become a shield without. Raising his voice, "We are going to take you somewhere warm," he told her. "Somewhere safe." Lena looked at Atlas again and touched the fur between his ears with trembling fingers. The old dog closed his eyes for half a second, as if that touch had reached a wound no medicine had ever found. Then, from inside the small backpack on the crate, a faint sound began. A tiny melody, thin and uneven, like a music box winding down. Marcus turned. Atlas raised his head sharply. Lena's fingers tightened in his sleeve. The backpack was faded purple, stained by weather, one strap nearly torn away. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside were a folded sweater, a plastic bottle of water, a child's notebook wrapped in a grocery bag, and a small toy music box shaped like a lighthouse. It played a few delicate notes, then stopped. Lena stared at it. Her voice came out so softly the rain nearly swallowed it. Daddy said, "Follow the light." Marcus felt those words move through the air and settle over everything they had found. He opened the notebook. The first pages were filled with drawings, some of Atlas, some of a house by the water, some of Daniel Reeves holding Lena's hand. But near the back, the drawings changed. Lines became maps. A row of boxes. A pier number. A lighthouse symbol. Under one picture, written in uneven child letters, were the words, "Atlas knows." Marcus turned the page and found a name written again and again, as if the child had copied it from something she had heard adults say when they thought she was not listening. Harbor House Foster Agency. He looked up, and Mallory's earlier warning came back to him like cold water. A false shelter. A place where paper could make a child disappear without ever crossing a state line. Atlas slowly rose, old joints stiff, breath heavy, and touched his nose to the lighthouse music box. Then he turned toward the street, toward a road running inland from the harbor, away from the warehouses, and toward the sleeping neighborhoods beyond. He was not finished. Not yet. Marcus closed the backpack and lifted Lena gently, careful to keep the jacket around her. She did not resist. Her hand reached down until her fingers found Atlas's collar, gripping it with quiet trust. The old dog stepped forward into the mist, leading them away from the yard, away from the first hiding place, toward the deeper truth Daniel had left behind. And as the three of them moved through the wet gate into the silent street, Marcus understood that finding Lena had not ended the secret. It had opened the door to the people who had tried to erase her. The mist thickened as they moved along the quiet streets, the glow from the harbor lamps casting elongated shadows across the wet pavement. Marcus held Lena close, careful to keep her dry jacket snug around her small shoulders, while Atlas walked steadily beside them, head low but eyes alert, ears flicking at every faint sound that came from the warehouses, the docks, and the distant hum of the ocean. The wind carried the faint scent of salt and pine, mixing with the damp odor of asphalt and old wood, anchoring them to the physical space while the gravity of their journey pressed inward. Every step Marcus took was deliberate, each movement calculated to maintain calm and security, letting Atlas take the lead, trusting the instincts and memories embedded in the old K9's every stride. They turned down a narrow lane that opened onto a row of abandoned warehouses, their metal siding dulled by rain and age, some doors hanging slightly open, others firmly closed, the air heavy with the scent of rust, salt water, and distant gasoline. Atlas paused at the first corner, tail stiff, amber eyes scanning the dark space ahead. Marcus crouched, letting the girl rest against him while observing Atlas's body language. Every twitch, every glance, every subtle motion was a silent communication, a guide to where safety and discovery converged. Then, without hesitation, Atlas moved forward, nudging a small gate with his nose and waiting patiently for Marcus to follow. The gate led into a courtyard where the remnants of shipping crates and tarpaulin-covered objects created a maze of shadows. Marcus felt a tension in the air, the kind that does not announce itself with sound, but with the weight of time and absence. Atlas led them carefully through the obstacles, pausing to sniff and lift his nose toward faint traces of footpaths, water runoff, and the lingering sense of human passage. The girl's eyes followed him with wonder and cautious curiosity, fingers still gripping Marcus's sleeve, her breathing slow but steady. As they approached the far end of the courtyard, Atlas stopped abruptly, pawing lightly at a patch of wet ground beneath a tarpaulin that had been held down by a stack of crates. Marcus knelt and gently lifted the cover. Beneath it, a small door, weathered and reinforced, revealed itself. The faint glow of light behind the door seeped through cracks, offering a promise of what lay beyond without revealing its full contents. Marcus checked the surrounding space and then, as Atlas nudged again, inserted the key retrieved earlier from the garage into the lock. The mechanism clicked softly, a quiet affirmation of access, and he pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room was modest and dimly lit, with the faint smell of dust, fabric, and warm air that had been trapped for weeks. There, in the corner, sitting upright on a thin mattress and clutching a small blanket, was Lena's faint outline. Her eyes widened slightly, the recognition slow but present. Atlas moved closer, laying his head gently beside her, emitting a soft, reassuring whine. Marcus set her down carefully, letting her step forward to meet the old dog, feeling the warmth of his fur, the steady pulse of loyalty beneath the white coat. She reached out and touched Atlas's ears and back, tentative at first, then with growing confidence, and the small movement coaxed a relaxed sigh from the dog. Marcus watched, feeling the gravity of the moment settle into a quiet relief, a bridge between the past and present. The room, with its faint hum of distant harbor activity and the echo of dripping water, held a stillness, as if recognizing the reunion unfolding. Marcus knelt beside them, speaking softly, each word deliberate. "You are safe now. You are home." Atlas raised his eyes to Marcus, a brief flicker of acknowledgement passing between man and dog, and then returned his gaze to Lena, the soft connection between them anchoring the fragile space with a steady reassurance. Outside, the night continued, indifferent yet witness, the mist shifting with the breeze, carrying away the scent of rain and harbor, leaving behind the quiet understanding that the journey was far from over, but that the first steps of trust and discovery had been completed. Lena hugged Atlas's neck, small arms wrapped around fur that had guarded her through months of uncertainty, and Marcus placed a hand gently on her back, feeling the rhythm of breathing, warmth, and the profound relief of finding what had been lost. The old dog's head rested lightly against her shoulder, tail sweeping across the floor in a measured, steady motion, as if to communicate the unspoken truth. Some promises endure, some guardians never abandon, and some journeys, no matter how long or perilous, lead to the restoration of safety, trust, and the quiet miracle of reunion. The first light of dawn crept over the harbor, filtering through the mist and reflecting softly off the water, painting the world in pale gold and silver. Marcus held Lena close, her small fingers still gripping the folds of his jacket, and for the first time, her breathing was steady and unhurried, no longer punctuated by the fear that had followed her for so long. Atlas lay at her side, body curled protectively, amber eyes scanning every movement, every shadow, ensuring that the space around them remained safe. The soft hum of distant ships and the occasional call of a gull added texture to the still morning, the city behind them waking slowly without disturbing the quiet miracle unfolding in the courtyard. Marcus crouched beside Atlas and Lena, feeling the warmth of the dog's body and the steady pulse beneath his fur, a reminder that loyalty is not bound by years alone, but by the depth of commitment and the weight of promises carried silently. He looked around the courtyard, noting the crates, tarps, and puddles glistening in the soft light, realizing that this ordinary, overlooked space had been the stage for extraordinary perseverance. The photograph, the shoes, the small music box, the folded letter, all artifacts of a past that could have been lost, now present, tangible, and protected by the steadfast K9. Lena slowly extended a hand toward Atlas, her touch tentative at first, then more assured, tracing the line of his shoulder and the curve of his neck. The dog responded with a subtle nudge of his muzzle, eyes softening, tail sweeping the ground once in measured rhythm, acknowledging her, accepting her, and sealing the bond that had guided them to this moment. Marcus exhaled, his chest rising and falling with a quiet steadiness, aware of the stillness around them, the soft rustle of wind through nearby trees, and the distant rhythm of the harbor that seemed to pulse in harmony with the heartbeat of this reunion. He spoke softly, deliberately, the words carrying the weight of months and the promise of a future no longer uncertain. "It is all right now. You are safe. You are home." Lena blinked, absorbing the sound of his voice, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, a tentative smile curved her lips, small and fragile, yet radiant in its clarity. Atlas pressed closer to her side, resting his head against her knees, his warmth steadying her, his presence a silent pledge that nothing would take her from safety again. Marcus gently adjusted the jacket around her shoulders, brushing rain-slicked hair from her face, while the soft morning light revealed the lines of worry on his own features, etched by years of missions, loss, and unspoken responsibility. They remained like this for a long moment, the three of them, man, child, and dog, connected in a fragile, yet unbreakable, triangle of trust, loyalty, and relief. Beyond the walls of the courtyard, the city began to stir, but inside this small space, time seemed to pause, allowing the quiet affirmation that some bonds endure, some guardians never relinquish their watch, and that miracles, small and steadfast, can be found in the unwavering devotion of a dog who waited and a man willing to trust. Atlas lifted his head, eyes sweeping the courtyard and street beyond, then settled once more beside Lena, amber gaze calm yet vigilant, embodying the assurance that their journey forward would be guided, protected, and quietly blessed. Marcus watched, recognizing the depth of understanding in the dog's eyes, and as he finally stood, he extended his hand toward Lena, who placed her small fingers in his. Together, they moved toward the gate, Atlas stepping just ahead, leading the way, the morning mist curling around their feet, the faint scent of salt and pine marking the path.